Hi, this is Lisa Angel with the Rosen Law Firm. In today's video, we're going to talk about child custody in North Carolina. What do you need to know in order to reach a child custody agreement? What terminology needs to be included? Then how does a court make a child custody decision? And then finally, we'll talk about mediation and what does that process look like. First, what do the words mean in a child custody setting? What do the words joint custody, sole custody, and visitation mean in North Carolina? Well, those words can actually mean different things in different documents. So what they might mean in a court order is different than what they could mean in a separation agreement. Let's talk first about what they could mean in a separation agreement, where you and your spouse or the other parent came to an agreement and you didn't have the court involved in any way. Joint custody and sole custody and visitation are going to mean what we say they mean. So if we say that joint custody means that the children live with one parent and visit the other parent every other weekend, that's what it means. And we're not limited by those words. We could use mom's time, dad's time. We could use co-parenting language. We are not required to use any particular words. So the good news about that when you're reaching an agreement is that you have a lot of flexibility, and there are a lot of ways to reach an agreement that fits just for your family and your children. A couple of things to keep in mind. If somehow the terminology is really important to your spouse, but it isn't necessarily important to you, then think instead about the issues that are important, like decision making. How are you going to make decisions together? And secondly, what will the schedule be? Fundamentally, those are the two most important things to have in a separation agreement related to custody. You need to know if there's a decision related to the health, the education, any kind of childcare issue related to your children, and you can't decide it together. How are you going to make that decision? Is there somebody that has the ultimate authority? Are you going to have a mediator help you? Make sure you include that in your agreement. And then the next thing you need to include in your agreement would be something about the physical custody schedule and lots of details surrounding that schedule. What happens if you need to make changes? What will the schedule look like? Will the schedule change over time? What will the holiday or summer vacation schedule look like? What about when school changes, if there's a year-round school versus traditional school? What will that look like as well? So all of those things are things that we can put in a separation agreement, and we're not limited by the terminology. What happens though when we haven't reached an agreement? We tried, we couldn't reach an agreement, and instead a court decided for us. The court is limited by the terminology. The court is going to use words like joint custody or sole custody. And by and large, sole custody means that that parent has decision-making control and that that parent is the one who has primary physical custody, meaning most of the days are with that parent. Joint custody, generally speaking, means that both parents are making decisions together and that the schedule tends to be a 50-50 schedule. There might be a lot of different ways that we do the 50-50 schedule, and it's not uncommon for judges also to make decisions about joint legal custody in terms of decision making, such that they might do all of the decisions joint except for one or two where parents are having some difficulty, and they would actually give that decision to one particular parent. So it's really important to look carefully at your court order when you're thinking about whether or not you actually have joint custody. Okay, so that's some about the terminology. Those are the words that we tend to use when we're either reaching an agreement or we're having a court decide for us. Now, let's talk a little bit about, well, how do courts make decisions? Maybe you're concerned that you might end up in court, you're not really sure. Maybe you're in the middle of a court battle. What do courts in North Carolina look at in terms of making a decision about child custody? Well, in essence, judges look at the things that we would look at. They look at things like, is there a primary caretaker? Has there historically been a primary caretaker? If so, is that person doing a good job? Are the children doing well in school? Extracurricular activities? Are they having any behavioral problems? How are each of the parents doing? Do they have any drug or alcohol problems? Is there physical violence by one parent towards another parent? All of the things that we would generally try to look at if we were making a decision, judges tend to look at. The law says in North Carolina, Judge, do what you think is best. Technically, the law says that the judge is to do what's in the best interest of the child. And there's very little limitation to that. In essence, a judge has a lot of discretion to look at just about everything that there is to look at. And so it's very common for us to think about school and how the children are doing in school, as well as how our parents historically how involved have they been? What do the parents' work schedules look like? How have the parents been doing emotionally or mentally during the process and historically throughout the marriage? All of those are things that we would probably look at if we were making the decision. A lot of parents will ask, well, can't my child just decide whether or not they go to one parent or the other? Can't my child tell the judge exactly what they want to have happen? And isn't there an age at which they get to decide? Well, in North Carolina, technically, if a child is under 18, a court can decide where they live. So a court can decide custody for any child under the age of 18. Over 18, the court has no jurisdiction. But as a practical matter, we don't see judges wanting to hear directly from children very often. Sometimes we will see judges order that there's a custody evaluation or some kind of psychological evaluation, and that's a way for a court to get in-depth and more information and maybe potentially have a therapist or a third party like a guardian ad litem or a therapist evaluator talk to a child. But most of the time, judges are not having the children decide. If they're under 18, technically a court can decide. The older they are, the less likely that becomes that we're having a custody battle, because often parents will just decide, okay, fine, if a teenager wants to live with the other parent, it's fine. So it's rare for us to have custody disputes over teenagers, but technically a court can decide that. The other question I get a lot is, well, my spouse had an affair or I had an affair. Is that going to impact my child custody case? And the answer is probably not. Most of the time, if the affair didn't actually impact the child, meaning that the person that you were involved with or your spouse was involved with is safe for children to be around, or maybe has never been around your children, then most likely a court is not going to put a dramatic amount of weight on that related to child custody. So what is some of the evidence that can be really helpful in a child custody case? We tend to look at the people around you in your life that can testify how you are as a parent. Mom says, I'm a good parent. Dad says, I'm a good parent. You start to kind of cancel each other out. And so it becomes important to look around at the people around you in your life that can say how the children are doing. The soccer coaches, the teachers, sometimes therapists, extracurricular activities that your children are involved with, neighbors that see you out playing with the children. So those are some of the things that we look at when we're trying a child custody case. We try to get a picture for how the child is doing, how well is that child doing, and get some third-party confirmation about some of the things that have been going on in the marriage. Child custody evaluations are helpful for that, as well as sometimes in some counties in North Carolina, we see guardian ad litems help with that as well. So that's some about how does a court make decisions. But the vast majority of people in North Carolina never have a court make a decision for them about child custody. And there are many reasons for that. One is that no matter how many days that you are allocated in court, you're never going to have enough time to present enough evidence to have a judge fully understand your situation, your marriage, your parenting, your children. It's very time-consuming, it's very costly, and court doesn't always fit a very creative solution. In mediation or a settlement conference or in an agreement, we're able to often come up with very creative solutions that help people to reach an agreement that's tailored directly to their family. Let's talk some about mediation in North Carolina for child custody. In most counties in North Carolina, in order for you to litigate, meaning have a court date about child custody, you're required to go to mediation first. And that is a mediation process that is offered through the court system. No lawyers are not present for that mediation. It's you and the other parent and the mediator. Often it's on Zoom or some kind of WebEx, some kind of online portal. And if you're concerned about your safety, the mediator will definitely take that into consideration. A mediator is someone that is trained in how to help people reach an agreement. They don't make recommendations. They don't testify to the court. They're not there to evaluate or to decide anything. They're there to help you reach an agreement. So if you and your spouse are able to reach an agreement, you won't necessarily need mediation, but it is a tool that you can use if you're having trouble reaching an agreement. It can be a very effective tool for both child custody as well as all of the other issues that we will talk about in this series. So that's an overview for you of child custody in North Carolina. Stick with the Rosen.com divorce series on YouTube and like and follow. Thank you.